ויהי ביום השמיני, כ"ח ניסן, מברך מחדש עיר, תש"ל. Vihi behem Hashmini kar Moshe la'aron u'levan of Ziknei Yisrael. At the beginning of this week's parsha, which we also learned last week, Moshe Rabbeinu called to Aaron and to his sons and to the elders of the Yid. And the pasuk continues the details of this matter as we do, and it's known the analysis and the examination of the Mamar, also the Maimer of the year 1944, which was Vahi b'shloishim shana. It was 30 years prior to when the Rebbe said this Maimer, 1974. In Tafshel Lamedal, remember what it says. Vahi b'yom hashmini, it was on the 8th day. Though this pasuk causes continuation to what it says Sefer Parsha Shlifnei at the end of the parsha prior to this, it says about the 7 days of the training of the Kohanim and of erecting the Mishkan. So there was like the 7 days of training beforehand. So that is what the parsha begins. And it wasn't the 8th day after they finished all of that. It wasn't the 8th day. That was the first day that the Mishkan finally went into service. So the pasuk did not have to say it was on the 8th day. It could have said just simply it was on the morrow. It was the day after that. It was the day that was the following day of the Miluyim. Why do I have to emphasize this idea that it was on the 8th day of the Miluyim? Rashi explained from the Sefer Seder Olam, Shabadubar Kan Shaykh L'Inyan, the Shmini, that what's spoken about over here is connected to the idea of the number 8. I'm sorry. Shapirish Rashi Miseder Olam Shmini Lameluyim. Rashi explains over here from the Seder Olam that it was the 8th day from the beginning of the training that they were training the Kohanim. So he goes V'notel Esra Torahs, and he took 10. That day took 10 crowns. In other words, there were different special things about that day. There were 10 different things that occurred on that day, on Rish Chodesh Nisan, and so on. It says, moving for this understood, Shamaduber Kan Shaykh in the Shmini, what's spoken about over here is connected to the idea of number 8. Because the fact that was specifically used that term and not Mimachras means that it's coming to tell you something that's unique to that thing. And afterwards the oral Torah reveals that not only does it have a connection with the idea of the number 8, and because of that it uses that, but also because it has the idea of the 10 crowns, the 10 special things that took place on that day. But we need to understand what's so special about why we are using over here the number 8. It goes on line 13. We also have to understand what it says that Moshe Rabbeinu called, that he called the elders, he called Aaron, he called the and so on. It should have said like it says in all the times throughout the Torah. And it was on the 8th day. And what happened? Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to them. He said what he said, and therefore that's what occurred. So he had that opportunity, and he spoke to them, and that's it. Why do you have to go into that he called, etc., etc.? What's this idea of calling? How would that fit into anything? So he goes on further. What's the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu called? What's also the idea of calling the elders of Yisrael? We know all the statements that were said were also to the elders of the Yidden. Mishnah, like it says in the order of the Mishnah, of how it was studied, of how it was given over to the process of Moshe Rabbeinu giving everything over. That first it was Moshe 11 first Moshe Rabbeinu studied whatever the topic was from Hashem. Nicholas Aaron, then Aaron entered. So then there was a second time when it was Moshe Rabbeinu learned it. First time for Aaron, then afterwards Nicholas Zakanim, then the elders entered in. So you had a third time, and then went to Bnei Yisrael. So there was a whole process that always went in the transmission of any teaching that Moshe Rabbeinu had to tell. Like it's brought down in the explanation of Rashi at the end of Parshas Kisisa from the words of Gemara in Masechtas Erev. Since afterwards it says to the Bnei Yisrael you should speak, saying, why does he have to mention specifically over here that he called the elders of Yisrael? Next page, top of page Vav. The idea behind this is why does it say over here that Moshe Rabbeinu called Kosherim Klolus in Yonishal Moshe? It's connected with the general idea of what Moshe Rabbeinu was about. Because he is the one, Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that affected the drawing down of the Shekhinah down here below. It says in the pasuk, I've come to my garden. Hashem says about his coming down here into this world that I've come to my garden, which is Legnuni, to my very special place, Lamakim Shayikri Batchila, to the place that I was there initially. That the primary place of the Shekhinah was initially down here below. Through the avodah of the forefathers and the tzaddikim that followed them. There was the drawing down the Shekhinah from above to below. Until Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the seventh. And all seventh are favorites. He brought the Shekhinah down from the lowest of the seventh heavens to the earth. And this took place during the giving of the Torah. Then was the nullifying of the decree. And those above should not descend below, and those below should not ascend above. Behind this means as follows. Even though before the giving of the Torah there was the concept of Torah, there was the idea of learning Torah, as we always know. Avram learned, and they knew the Torah Kula, and Yaakov, and there was establishment in Yeshiva Mitzrayim, so Torah was there. The Kol Makom still know Hoya in Shel Gezeda, a shnit, meaning in Yiddish, it's a Yiddish word for cut. Shehifsik bein al yoyin v'tachtoinim. It was more, in other words, the Rebbe is using the word Gezeda. Normally, the word Gezeda means decree, and that's the normal way how we translate this medrash. There was a decree, al yoinim should not go down to the tachtoinim, the above should not come down below, those below should not rise above, like the story with Rome and Syria, the analogy that the medrash always says that the people of Rome should not go down to Syria, the people of Syria should not go to Rome. But the Rebbe also translates Gezeda, is also meaning in Lashon Kodesh, cutting. So it was more than just a decree, it was a cut, it was like a complete divide. Shehifsik bein hal yonim tachtoinim, it's separated between those above and those below. Shal yonim le'yerdu l'mata, v'tachtoinim le'al l'mayla, the above should not descend below, and those below should not ascend above. B'shas matan Torah, hayabit lagzein, and during the giving of Torah, there was the nullification of the decree. V'nitla mechitza mafsekes, ben el yonim tachtoinim, it was removed, the division that separates between the ones above and the ones below. And then those that were above descended below, and those below ascended above. The reason why this was done specifically through Moshe Rabbeinu, that he was the one that caused this joining of the two. because in the Torah, when it says that Hashem called Moshe Rabbeinu, it says Moshe, Moshe, as a sign of specialness and love. Hashem said Moshe Rabbeinu's name twice, but he said it also by Avram. But by Avram, there is a sign of cantillation, of a trop, that indicates that there is a separation between the two. But by Moshe Rabbeinu, there is no separation between the two names of Moshe. That Chassidus explains, what does that indicate spiritually, when there's no separation between the two names of Moshe? Top of page Zion. That by Moshe Rabbeinu there was no distinction and no difference between the worlds of Atzilus and Briya, that the way, as we're soon going to explain. So in other words, the two levels of Moshe, the first word Moshe is the way Moshe Rabbeinu is in Atzilus. The second time it says Moshe is Moshe, the way he's in Biyah. The fact there's no cantillation, separation between the two, indicates that Sheba Oisa, Oifen Shohay Batzilus, in the very same manner that he was in Atzilus, he was also in the worlds of Bri Yitzir Asiyah. How come? Why was it possible for him to be in the same way down in the lower worlds as he was in Atzilus? Because by Moshe Rabbeinu shown the level of Keser, that's beyond the world of Atzilus, and beyond, and therefore in Bri Yitzira Vasiya together. So since Keser is beyond Atzilus and Biyah, so when Keser shines, there's no distinctions and no separations between them. Since there was no differences by him between Atzilus and Briya Yitzira and Asiyah, therefore through him there was the nullification, the decree that separates between the ones above and the ones below, because he had within himself that joining of the, if you will, disparate levels. So therefore, he was specifically the one that was supposed to put together these two extremes of Elyonim and Tachtonim, the above and below. That's also why the giving of the Torah began with the word Anoichi. Through the revelation of a level of Anoichi that's not hinted by any letter and any point on top of a letter. Was the drawing down of the Torah till the most lowest place, because when you have a level that's so high, Anoichi, that's beyond any type of name, it's not even hinted in the letter of a name, not even hinted in the point on top of a letter of any name, so that's like Keser, that's beyond Atzilus and Briya Yitzir Asiyah. So when Keser is beyond Atzilus and Briya Yitzir Asiyah, it could join them together. The same thing, we have the level of Anoichi that's beyond everything. It's possible to take the Torah, which is so high, and bring it down so low. Second paragraph on page Zion, line 12. That's also the idea that says it wasn't the 8th day Moshe Rabbeinu called out. The idea that Moshe Rabbeinu called, he drew down and the Shechina down here below. That's the idea of Kara. Kara is calling, Chassidus always says, like you call your friend to you. So Moshe Rabbeinu called down, drew down the level of the Shechina. Kosher Mechinas Shmini, that's connected with the number 8, with the 8th level. This level of number 8 is beyond the 7 levels of the building, meaning the 7 days of creation, which is, what's the level that's beyond the 7 midas? Bechinas Bina, the level of Bina. Das is a lot of times left out of the equation, it's only a connector. So Bina is number 8. When you count Malchus all the way up to Chesed. And also the number 8 is connected with the perfection of Mashiach's times, the completion of Mashiach's time. The stringed instrument that they're going to be playing in the Beis HaMikdash in the days of Mashiach will, instead of having 7 strands, it will have 8 strands, because the number 8 is beyond Seder Ishtalshlus, and that's why it has to do with Mashiach's times. In addition to this, Yom Hashmini not Esra Torres. On the 8th day of the Miluim, like we've said before from Rashi, it had 10 crowns. How do you get 10? Either it's 8 or it's 10. So Bina has such a central role that it includes in it all the 3 first spheres, which is Chachma, Bina, Das. So therefore, when you have, it's the 8th level, you have on top of the 7, you have Bina, which includes all 3, so then you have the 10 crowns. But Zaguf and this itself, when you called it crowns. It wasn't just 10 crowns. Loirak Eser Pnimium, not only does it become revealed on that day, on the 8th, which is so high, the level of the 10 inner levels, the levels that permeate El Esra Torres, but also the 10 crowns, Shezoya Shlem is the Eser Kvishim Bekeser. This means the perfection and completion of the number 10, the weights and the level of Keser. The Kosher Gamim, meaning the Kinder de Lasad Lovish Lasar and Nimim, it's also connected with the harp, or the stringed instrument of the future time that will be of 10 strands. Even though Mashiach's times it says of 8, but then after that, I guess Tchias HaMesim time, it will be 10, like it says, Ali Osir, that will be upon 10. So it says, before it says, Lamratseach al Ashminis, that he makes, I don't remember actually, if that has to do with the idea of 8, or there's, yes, right, and then there's a different place where it says Ali Osir. Ali Osir is the 10 strands that will take place afterwards. Top of page Ches in the Maimon. Oizgim. Behineim. In the Matan Torah, but the idea of the giving of the Torah comes as a continuation of going out of Mitzrayim. Like it says, when you will take this nation out of Mitzrayim, you will serve Hashem on this mountain. It was explained previously at length in the previous Amarim that we were learning. That's like a little bit of a connection with this. The Maimer B'chol Dor, the Maimer V'Hechrim, that was we learned during Chalamoid, that it says, Shebitzias Mitzrayim, Yeshnom Shloishin Yonim Klolim. In going out of Mitzrayim, there are 3 general ideas. Kefish Yitzias Mitzrayim, Hoysa Pamar Shoyna, like the going out of Mitzrayim was the first time around. V'acharka, Kefish B'chol Shana V'Shana V'chamish Osman Nisan, and afterwards it waits every single year on the 15th of Nisan. And so too, every single day that a person needs to see himself as if he went out today from Mitzrayim. So that's in the same category. There is the actual event that took place 15th of Nisan, 3,300 and something years ago. Then there is the recollection of it every Pesach, plus the recollection of it every single day. That's category number 2. And afterwards, the way it's going to be in the future in a higher way. Like it says, like your days going out of the land of Mitzrayim, I will show you wonders. It will be wonders even comparably to your days going out of the land of Mitzrayim. So there is these 3 levels of going out of Mitzrayim. Yet, even though it will be wonders, in other words, Mashiach's times will be wondrous and incomparably higher than the Yitzias Mitzrayim, that will be considered wonders even concerning in comparison to the miracles of Yitzias Mitzrayim. So he says, Yaskiru Gam Oza in the Yitzias Mitzrayim. Even then, they will mention the idea of going out of Mitzrayim. Even though it will be in a secondary and ancillary manner. So just like Yitzias Mitzrayim will still have some significance, even though it will be of a lesser power than the going out of the final Golas, the same way, Kriyas Yamsuf, he says in line 15, Valderach the Kriyas Yamsuf, in a similar vein concerning the splitting of the sea, that there's these 3 levels as well. There's the splitting of the sea the way it was the first time around, that the sea was transformed to dry land. Then there's the splitting of the sea, the way it's every single year. The same thing every day. Like we mentioned in the Mimer last week during Chalamoid, that the Tosefta says that we have to mention or have to remember the splitting of the sea every single day, just like we have to remember going out of Mitzrayim every day. And afterwards, there is the splitting of the sea, the way it's going to be in the future time, that Mashiach will also split the river by Nari Avra Barogel, that they were to cross by foot the river of the Euphrates and Har Pros. It'll be in a much higher way than the way the Kriyas Yamsuf was, that he transformed sea to dry land. Al Sha'af became still in all, Yaskiru Gamas in the Kriyas Yamsuf, they'll still mention the idea of the splitting of the sea. Like it says in the Haftarah, what we read yesterday, there will be a path. We're comparing the path that Mashiach is going to make through the sea, through the river, just like there was a path for the Yidden when they went out of the land of Mitzrayim, when they went up from the land of Mitzrayim. So again, we see just like when Mashiach comes, we will still remember and the idea of going out of Mitzrayim. The same thing when Mashiach comes, we'll still remember the Kriyas Yamsuf. Moving from this understood. In a similar vein, also in the giving of the Torah that's going to come, that came as a continuation to going out of Mitzrayim and the splitting of the sea. There's also these three things. The idea of the giving of the Torah, the way it was the first time that it ever occurred. And afterwards, the way it's every single year that we have it on the Yom Tov of Shavuos, and also top of page test in your nice not Torah. She's only nice not Torah. That's the idea that it says the one who is giving the Torah, Lashon Haiva, in present tense. Because the giving of the Torah is an experience we always have to re-experience. Therefore, the Shalchein Omer Azal, that's why the Chazal said Mal Halan V'Chulu Afkan, just like there by Matan Torah, there was Be'em of a year of rest of Bazia, was great trembling and fear and shaking and so on. The same thing whenever a person sits down and learns Torah has to be in the same manner. Like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, how is it possible? I'm sorry, in Torah, the Alter Rebbe explains this. How can we demand, like the Chazal just now said, that we quoted in Chazal, how can the Chazal ask from us that the study of Torah now should be with the same fear and trembling and shaking and so on, the way it was by Matan Torah? How come? Because whoever is reading in Tanakh or he's learning in Torah Sheba'al Peh, so Hashem is reading and learning facing him, just like was by Matan Torah. So that's the re-experiencing of Matan Torah on a daily basis, similar to re-experiencing Yetzias Mitzrayim on a daily basis, re-experiencing Kriyas Yamsuf on a daily basis. So this is all option 2 or variation 2 of Matan Torah. Then he says in line 7, in the Matan Torah she lost Lavi. Afterwards, there's the idea of the giving of the Torah that will be in the future time when Mashiach comes. It's the idea of the Torah of Mashiach, that's what we're going to receive when Mashiach comes. It says that the Torah of this world is incomparable. It's hevel, it's like air, it's like breath, it's nothing. It's insignificant in comparison to the Torah of Mashiach. So just like Yetzias Mitzrayim is incomparable to what's going to be then. So Sha'afal became still in all, yes, Ma'ilabit Matan Torah upon Rishoina. There's still an advantage in the giving of the Torah the first time around that it happened. Kiyadua Pisgum, like it's known, the statement that's brought down in Chassidus, Shelo Yia Oida Pa Matan Torah. Matan Torah is never going to be again. Even the Torah Mashiach was already given by Har Sinai, Kol Gam Terasa Shel Mashiach, the loss of love, including also the Torah of Mashiach in the future time.